Right. Our goal today is to inform and motivate on a topic that tends to live perpetually on the back burner for most of us who own or manage small businesses. And business continuity and disaster recovery planning is not as expensive or as hard as we think. It just takes time. So yes, we're an IT services company, and we will spend some time talking today about data and systems, but that's not all that's involved in good business continuity planning and the ability to recover from business disruptions or disaster. Here's a story, I hope, that will illustrate the point a little bit.
Can you turn off the music?
About 2 or 3 years ago, another owner of an IT service provider company in Florida. He's a young man in his 30s. He's very healthy, has a successful business. And being a successful managed services provider, had good IT systems in place, well protected, well backed up. He was scuba diving and passed away. He did not have a legacy plan in place. He did not have a business continuity plan in place. He had a lot of friends and peers in the business who rallied to his wife and the people in the business to help them continue after he passed, but without the information around banking and payroll, without the plan, without passwords, without a lot of things, it was very, very, very difficult, highly disruptive. So it's not all about IT systems. Of course, IT systems and data are integrated and interwoven in the very fabric of everything we do as a business nowadays. Every critical function and process seems like it has some IT part related to it. But we want to go a few steps further today, and this will not be a 90-minute commercial about data backup, although we'll talk about it. I'd like to thank our sponsors today. One of our sponsors is StorageCraft, and Jeff Wheeler is going to be speaking. And also we have Steve from Artisan Infrastructure. They're responsible. So Mighty Pros, yes, we're doing well, but we're not paying for the steaks. These guys are paying for the steaks and food. So thanks a lot for that. My name is Chris Boyle. I'm the CEO and president of MyIT Pros. Jeff Wheeler will be speaking after me at StorageCraft. Bill McCarron, most of you know Bill. He'll be finishing up the presentation, and we'll be stopping for Q&A as we go along. I want to give a special shout out to Lori, who I think everyone in this room has talked to about this event.
Or I've bugged
if you've been
you.
to other events, you've talked to her more than that. She is looking for feedback. We're all, yes, she's awesome. We're all looking for feedback. We want to improve our content. This is the third Lunch and Learn we've done. We're doing one every quarter. So please give us your feedback. We're not above bribery. We'll send you a $5 gift card. Lori will send you a $5 gift card as a way to say thank you. And Meredith Thomas in the back of the room is also with MyIT Pros. We don't have a slide for her, but she really helps make these things happen. When you're a presenter, when you're putting together information for a program like this, it's so good to know that the logistics are being handled and that people will be here. So thanks to Lori and to Meredith for that. And also for MyIT Pros, we have Nathan and Justin. Nathan and Justin, will you please stand up? If you're a customer of MyIT Pros, you've talked to these guys. They're on our service desk, and Sheridan is also here. Sheridan's in the back of the room. Sheridan Steve is our controller. So thanks again for coming. So who are we? We've been in business since 1993. I joined the company in 2000 when it was 3-4 people. Today we're 14 people, looking to add another person or two in the next few months. We've grown to become one of the 5 top managed service providers in Austin, Texas. At present, we are managing 77 clients with a total of 288 servers and over 1,400 desktops and laptops or user devices. We're also one of the top cloud service providers in the Austin, Texas area. And of those 77 clients and all those servers, about 1 in 5 have all of those servers in our cloud now. We do have one larger client that has 30 servers in the Amazon cloud. We manage that one. The first thing that I'd like to do today is to answer some basic questions about business continuity, disaster recovery. What are they? What's the difference? Then we're going to do kind of a business continuity planning 101. I'll prepare for that a little bit by talking about the most common types of business disruptions. And then Jeff is going to get into the first part of business continuity planning, not just answering the question, what are your downtime costs, but what is recovery time objective, and what is recovery point objective, and why are those things important when you're doing your business continuity planning. And Bill will wrap up with the real nuts and bolts of how to do a business continuity plan and share with you the 5 essential steps to business continuity and disaster recovery planning. What is it? The simple definition of business continuity is the ability of the key operations of a firm to continue without stoppage, irrespective of the adverse circumstances or events. So business continuity is a methodology that's really about the day-to-day things that all of us do in a business to keep things running. And a business continuity plan also includes disaster recovery. So the simple definition of disaster recovery, which is a subset of business continuity, is this. It's the process of returning an organization, society, or system to a state of normality after the occurrence of a disastrous event. So what are the most common causes of business disruptions? Disasters make the news, but we live in a world where the mundane really rolls. So there's things that are not quite going to make the evening news that happen to all of us quite often. I found some interesting information that was put together by Zurich Financial Services Group as well as the Business Continuity Institute in the UK. And they surveyed companies from around the world on what are the supply chain interruptions or disruptions that they've had. So the over 500 companies were asked what things have interrupted their business due to supply chain interruptions. And I bring this up because these are the kind of things that we don't really think about, but it sinks in really nicely when we think of business disruptions from an IT standpoint or disaster standpoint. So the numbers that I'm going to show you will add up to more than 100%, and that's because of the 85% of the companies that had some type of interruption to their business. Most of them had more than one, and more than one cause. So the top one was adverse weather. How many people in this room were all people that either own or work in a business have experienced an interruption to the business in general or your ability to work in the business due to weather? So about half the room raised their hand. I know that my wife and I, before I joined MIT Pros in 2000, my wife and I had an organic nursery business. She grew certified organic plants, and I helped her sell them to nurseries. We have 20 acres out in Caldwell County, and in the late 90s there was this crazy rainstorm that just flooded things out, and it washed a county road bridge out in a little gully that was dry most of the time. And we couldn't drive back and forth from our place for several days. Ice happens to us here in Texas, so weather definitely has an effect. How many folks in here have had a disruption due to IT or telecom outage? Well, it's got to be everybody, right? At least for a few minutes. Yeah, it happens. It's one of the reasons why we're in business. Transport network disruption. We had a transport network disruption this morning when Jeff Wheeler, his flight was canceled.
A light bulb.
But they uncanceled it, they got him going on the plane, and he made it. But has anybody had a disruption to their business because trucking companies or rail lines or airlines or some kind of transport network was down? Not, so okay, we saw one in the back, not quite as many. Earthquake or tsunami. I was shocked when I saw 21% of the companies around the world. And then I got to thinking, in 1994, do you remember the Northridge earthquake on Martin Luther King Day? It was in California. I was in California at the time. I was on a loading dock at a grocery warehouse. It was in the 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning range, and I was actually standing between the back of a tractor trailer and the wall of the warehouse when that trailer just moved away about 2 feet and slammed up against the bumper. And things were shaking, and I jumped down on the ground, and I felt like I was in a raft in a lake. It was one of the most bizarre feelings that I ever felt. It didn't disrupt my business too much, but a lot of businesses in the U.S. were disrupted when that earthquake happened. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. You don't have earthquakes there, right? My sisters, 2 of them, still live in the area. They did have an earthquake a year or so ago. So after I thought about it, it wasn't quite as shocking. It's shocking to me that only 13% of the respondents around the world have had a business disruption due to loss of talent or skills. I'm curious, who here has had a business disruption due to a loss of talent or skills? More than 13%, I can see. We've certainly had that at My IT Pros. Some of you who are clients maybe remember when we've had that happen at My IT Pros. So back to this slide, IT or telecom outage. So this is our business. This is gathered from a bunch of different sources. StorageCraft and companies like them regularly poll their customer base to find out what's causing you to have a data disaster. And hardware failure, 43%. Anybody? Looks like about 43%. The next biggest one was human error. Anybody? Okay. So more in this room have had human error. Has anybody ever gone in to do a webinar and 15 minutes before the webinar find out that your PowerPoint is
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's never happened to us. Software failure, anybody? Security breach or theft. So and then natural disaster. 3 to 5% of data disruptions, of business disruptions, of supply chain disruptions are natural disasters in general. So Nathan and Justin, you guys work in this field on a daily basis. You take calls all the time. I know that I have a sense that in our business, there's not as much of some of these things as others. Nathan, what would you say when people have lost their data or they can't do their work? What would you say is the number one thing?
On a small scale, human error. On a big scale, hardware failure.
Hardware failure. So Nathan concurs. Justin, what do you think?
I agree.
Okay. Bill, you've been in this business for a long time. You're not so much doing system engineering work anymore like you did for years, but when you've seen clients lose data, what have you seen the most of?
Hardware, software failures.
Okay. All right. So the numbers do line up. I really expected this number to be higher. I'm not a technician. I've never actively supported clients, but I hear on the periphery malwares causing data disruption or disruptions. And That's not so much, I think, what they mean by security breach here. I think they mean that's hacking, right? Or somebody comes in and steals your server, which is a horrible thing to have happen. So we have some stories that we've heard over the years. One of the things that I first ran across, this was about 10 years ago, it was a fairly large company for us. Most of our clients have less than 100 users. Most of us have less than 50 users, but this company had over 200 users, and they had a bunch of servers that were very old, needed to be changed. They hired us. We ordered the servers from Dell. We were ready to do the project, and then they started failing. And it was just amazing. I mean, they were one day away from being delivered, and these servers started failing. It was hugely disruptive for them. It about tripled the cost of the project for us, because instead of being a planned migration of these servers, it became a disaster recovery project. A few years later, we had another client. I think it was the very last client we had to get off of Windows NT server, which was 1999-ish, and this was at least 10 years later. They thought they were getting good tape backups. They were not a managed service client. They only called us rarely. They are now, but they weren't back then. And their new server was literally on the floor, ready for us to come out and start the project, when the old one, the old one did not die, but they had a failure that caused them not to be able to get into their database. So they went to get the backup. It's not there. The tapes that they had been swapping out, no data on them. They took the hard drives to a hard drive data recovery, big lab. They charged thousands of dollars. They ran up about a $10,000 bill and still didn't get all of their data back. So aging servers are scary. Water damage. I didn't have firsthand experience with this, but it's clients of ours. Bill went to meet with a long-time client of ours about moving their servers to the cloud, and when they got there, they couldn't meet. They had to go out for coffee somewhere because there had been water that had come through from the plumbing in the ceiling. The AC down onto the servers. Another client of ours had a similar thing happen, either air conditioning or plumbing, water got on the server in nice office buildings, in Class A or Class B space. So this is, yeah, we have floods here, but that's not the only kind of water damage you can have. Human error. Well, we already talked about the PowerPoint, so we'll move on for that.
Thank you.
And what about bad guys? By and large, people who own IT service provider companies are good people. They want to do good. They don't always do a good job, but they really want to do well. There's only one or two shady characters. We learned about one of them when a dental firm called us, a fairly good-sized practice. And they had been paying for a hosted backup service for years. Their server failed, and they didn't have the data. So they were also their IT service provider. They took the server to their office, ran up about a $20,000 bill, and would not give them the server back until they paid the bill. And then there's hackers and other kind of things. So here's some sobering facts. And by the way, Lori, it's moo-hoo-hoo, ha ha.
I did a Wikipedia search on it to find the proper spelling of mwahaha.
I should know better than to correct you by now. After all this time, I should know better. Up to 40% of businesses affected by a natural or human-caused disaster never reopen. 90% of businesses who experience 1 week of downtime go out of business within 6 months. National Archives and Records Administration is the source of this. Also, National Archives and Records Administration, 20% of small to medium businesses will experience data loss within 5 years. I was kind of surprised to see that. 70% of all business people have already experienced some sort of technology disaster. I'm curious again to gauge this against the people in the room. How many in the years of business that you've relied on technology have experienced a data disaster, which you would characterize as a data disaster? Business or personal? How about personal? We got some more hands. Okay, so I think about half the people in the room have had experience. This was 2009, but it was a number that showed that 70% of businesses experienced a data loss, and the average cost of that data loss was $4,700. So before I turn it over to Jeff for his part, do we have any questions so far? Hearing none.
Are we there?
Yes.
All right. Good, thank you. Well, my name is Jeff Wheeler, and I've been sitting back just kind of watching you. Y'all are awfully quiet. I'm out of Dallas. I spend a lot of time in Austin, and I really like the city. And I appreciate Bill and Chris having me here. So what does it cost your organization to be down? And there's a lot of theories on this. We all know we have employees and time to rebuild servers and all that good stuff. So, you know, a typical thing to do is to define your business. So who's defined their business in a disaster recovery scenario? Has anybody figured out what it cost them or sat down and put pen to paper? Anybody at all? So it doesn't surprise me to hear that, because actually not a lot of people do this and don't think about it. What it's asking on the screen right here is one point to define is your recovery point objective. And the recovery point objective is how much data are you willing to rekey between backups. So who's doing nightly backups just on your data? Raise your hand. You're doing nightly backups, okay? And what's your name?
My name's Sarah.
Sarah, nice to meet you,
I thought you were
Sarah.
talking to
Good.
somebody
No,
else.
it's all right. So you're doing nightly backups, and you know what you're backing up? Are you backing up just your data, just your program files and all that?
Yeah, I've changed anything that changes.
Okay. So is it image-based, or is it file and folder? Do you know?
I've got somebody that we're about to fire that's
Okay.
doing that right now.
Very good.
I don't know.
Good answer. Introduce you to Bill real quick. So most people are doing, a lot of people are doing file and folder. We all know our Word docs, our PowerPoints, our presentations, maybe a database, whatever the case may be, right? So the recovery point objective in that scenario is if you have to rebuild a server and you just have the data, right? You're going to have to rebuild the whole server. I mean, there's lots of components to it. So let's define what a recovery point objective would be for your organization. So how much data are you willing to rekey between backups? Right now you're telling me you're willing to rekey a whole day's worth of data. So what would be ideally what you'd like to have?
Not to have to do it at all.
Okay, there you go. What if I said 15 minutes? Would that be acceptable?
That would be acceptable.
15 minutes, okay, great. So let's define, you said Sarah, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Sarah said 15 minutes, and you'll make sure you write that down. So that's recovery point objective. So when you guys go back to your offices, one of the things I want you to do, if you've not done this, is sit down to whoever this decision maker is and define these points. And then if your current backup solution doesn't match those points, please call Bill. And they will help you with this scenario, because a lot of people don't think of this. The recovery time objective. Once your server's down, how fast do you want them back up? So in your case there, if your servers are down, how many servers do you have, by the way?
One sort of server.
One sort of server. Well, that's okay. I'm worried about you, by the way. I'll have you know.
That's why I'm getting professional help.
Perfect. We need to see you. So, recovery time objective. Once your server's down, how fast do you want your server back up? And I'm sorry to pick on you.
Like now.
Now, right? Okay.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. There you go. So who in the room, actually, thank you for ramping me up to that question. Who in the room can recover a server in under 5 minutes? Or who thinks they can do that? I mean, it's kind of an impossible question, right? I'm actually going to do it for you in about 5 minutes. So we'll show you, because I can do it. So recovery time objective. I want you to go back to your offices and define recovery point and recovery time objectives. Now let's put some thinking behind this. So when a server goes down, of course, everybody in the room has all their license keys in a folder ready to go, hand to the IT professional to rebuild, right? Who has all their license keys all organized? Right. Not one person in the room. Were you? Okay, one guy. One guy out of how many are here? Okay. That's scary, folks. Because let me just tell you, if you lose those keys, you're calling Microsoft going, hey, I need that key. Well, wouldn't you buy it? Well, I don't know. So, all right. So, and QuickBooks, all the different programs, your application that runs your business, all these keys are necessary to turn that software back on. So if you don't have that, again, I'm worried for you. Reloading Windows. Who's ever sat and rebuilt a server? I mean, Bill, I'm sure, yeah, some people have done it great. I've done it. I mean, it's days. I mean, you reload Windows and then you have to bring down all the 3,000 updates and it's up to the internet and it's a slow download connection and I mean, you're just sitting, I mean, there's nothing you can do. You just sit there and look at it. And it basically rebuilds itself, right? So it's a very long, tedious process. And so I'm building up to a fun scenario that I'm going to get to in just a minute. Then reloading your programs. Of course, everybody's got the CDs, right? Not only the license keys, but they have all the CDs laying around and they're the latest versions, right? They're all in the box, organized, ready to go, so you just hand them to that professional and, yeah, right. No, that's not the case either. I can't even have my own CDs at home, much less the ones at the server. So, you know, QuickBooks, I don't know if you know, but QuickBooks dates like every 10 minutes. I mean, I get like an update every day. I turn the computer like, what's this R22 update? You know, it's crazy. So, but when you restore up QuickBooks, just so you know, you have to have the exact version to go back to, or it doesn't restore. So there's some keys at that. So basically, you know, what is involved rebuilding PC? I just went through a lot of the steps. It's the server, it's the program files, it's the data, it's the software, it's your settings, everything that makes an organization go and run through. So, you know, this is just a good summary, but when you go back to the offices again, make sure you define these points and make sure you have a good solid game plan. And I'm going to show you one here in just a little bit. So how much you're willing to spend, this is another great point. How many, you know, when an IT professional comes in and they have to rebuild their server, you know, you're paying that person per hour, right? And that's if it goes good, right? If there's something missing or whatever. So a quick scenario here is obviously $125 an hour. You know, a good couple of days, providing that person goes home, comes back next day to finish it. I mean, are you willing to write a check for $2,000 out of the blue when your server dies? Well, that's just one part of it. Think about your employees. So now your employees are all sitting around with nothing to do. They have no access to the servers. Each individual person is, you know, different. But I met with one individual company a while back, and I said, well, how many employees do you have? She goes, well, I have 10. And I said, well, what's your average cost per employee? She says, about $30 so dollars. It'd be great. And I said, well, it's going to take about 16 hours. So in that scenario, it was about $2,300 plus the IT provider's service. There's another $2,000 or $3,000 plus lost productivity, lost sales, lost all that stuff. So, you know, Sarah, are you willing tomorrow morning if I show up at 9, you know, maybe 10 o'clock's fine, and pick up a check for about $8,000? Is that good? That's probably not going to happen. So, well, then that means you're probably going to go out of business, right? I mean, you got to have that server, right? So that's just something to think about. Is that sudden disaster can hit you, upset customers, disorganized, all that good stuff. So what am I leading up to? And this is a good example of this. Who all wants this image right here? We like that image, right? It's pretty cool. What if I just gave you this? That's like, I don't want a tree. I just want the whole image, right? I want to be sitting out there basking in the sun with my margarita. So this is basically file and folder backup. This is what I'm trying to explain. This is what we call an image-based backup. So when I say image-based backup, we take a photograph of the server, we load under the operating system, and anything that changes on the server for the life of that server, as quick as every 15 minutes, I can capture those incremental changes. So saying that, when I go to restore a server and I'm image-based backup, I literally put the CD in, I point to those backup files, I sit and wait for it. About 30 to 45 minutes later, the server is rebuilt, it reboots, and you go back to work. There's no reloading program files, there's no reloading the data, there's no reloading any of that stuff. You literally put the recovery environment in, you look at those files, and you let it do this work. That's an image-based backup. So if you don't have that scenario in your office, we need to talk. So this is what we're basically used to, you know, our documents are what we're basically used to backing up. And this, who's all using tape, by the way? Is there tape anywhere in the room still? Yay. I get tape every so often. And, you know, Microsoft quit supporting tape like 6 or 7 years ago or something like that. So, you know, we're used to using, backing up our files and folders. What I'm talking about is an image. So this right here, and I don't know if do I have a pointer here? I do. This base image right here, this ShadowProtect full image, that full image is everything on that server. So it's your program files, it's your data, it's everything in that base image. And then what we do is we take incrementals or sector level changes. So if I open up a Word doc and I change the word "the" to "and," I save it. Those are 3 sectors on a hard drive. that gets written to a bitmap file. We go out, we read that bitmap file, we grab those 3 sectors, and we call that an incremental. So for the rest of the life of the server, every 15 minutes, I can do that every hour, once a day, it doesn't matter. I can take backups of your entire server. So when it's time to restore, I literally choose, say it's 610, and I need to restore back at 610. I put the recovery environment in, I point to that backup file 610, and it rebuilds it from that point on, and it reboots, and you're back in business. What kind of questions do you have? I know this is kind of a, go ahead.
How does this compare to Apple's Time Machine?
Just like Apple's Time Machine. There's a little differences to it, but you're in the exact same ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? So this is a great story, and while we're doing this, I'm gonna go ahead and talk over here. So I'm driving down the road. I'm in Dallas, right? And there's Highway 75, and I'm going down the road. And you want to move? Yeah, go ahead and move the cable over. And I'm driving down the road, and I get a call, and it's it's my wife Amy, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing." She goes, "I just got the blue screen of death." I'm like, "Yeah, how do you know the blue screen of death? Who told you that?" I'm like, "Well, I heard you say it, but quit joking around." She was like, I can't get my laptop working. I'm like, "Well, did you try to reboot it?" She was, "You tell me that every time." I'm like, "Okay, I know. Did you reboot it?" "Yes, twice, and I still get this blue screen." I'm like, "Okay, great." I said, "Honey, don't worry about it. You're ready to the backup guy. I got this. This is good." So I ran to the Fry's. I got a hard drive. I came to the house, put the hard drive in. I put a recovery environment in. Of course, I have a little NAS device, a little hard drive thing in our house that backs up her computer because I know she's not going to pay attention to that. And I put the recovery in. I point to it, and it starts to back up. And then 19 minutes later, I hand her back her laptop. I'm like, "All right, you're done." And she's like, "Wait a minute. What do you mean I'm done?" It's like, "Yeah, you're done. You're fixed." "Is it working?" She goes, "Well, yes." She goes, "No, normally it's here Saturday. You're all day. You can't find the CDs. You can't find the software. You don't know what drive has our pictures and whatever here and all my email stuff and all this stuff. How did you fix it so fast?" I'm like, "Honey, if I told you it pays the bills, this is what I do for a living." I'm sorry. I'll explain better next time. So my point is I recovered her computer in 19 minutes. Now, who all has desktops and workstations, laptops in our lives, right? And are you imaging those too? Probably not. So when those things die, they're going to die, right? You're going to drop it. You're going to lose a hard drive. You're going to lose some data. You're going to lose something. You're going to want to recover it. So while we're in the middle of doing this, I'm going to go ahead and sit down so you guys can pay attention to the screen. I have a server right here that I'm going to go ahead and create some data on. So let's call it blue. Someone, no, that's not blue. That's somebody yell out a 2-digit number. 17, I heard. All right, is that way you know that I didn't do this ahead of time and we're staging this demo. So let's go ahead and let's look at this and kick that back up off. While it's doing that, shouldn't take just a minute. And then so what I'm going to do just for this demonstration is I'm going to go ahead and back the server up. This is and I can kind of show you what the server is. It's a Windows 2000 server. Let's get back up here. So you can see right here on the screen it's a Windows 2008 R2 server. And I'm actually backing it up so we can back into the software. And that one says it's going to take 5 minutes. It's going to just take seconds. Of course, that's what happens when you do a demo, right? So I'm going to give you a quick example. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate this exactly the way I want it. But at least you're going to get the idea. So let's pretend that server crashed. So let me just go ahead and I minimized it. Let me just go ahead and shut it down, actually. That would be the best thing to do. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this job. Cancel that. That's going to stop. Get out of that. Let me just shut this guy down. Let's power it down. So let's pretend we just lost the server. Okay, now the server's dead. So maybe a server A, server B in your environment. So server A is now officially dead. I log on to server B, and I'm going to look at server A's files. So let's pretend these are server A's backup files. I literally right mouse click. I choose virtual boot. And of course, I'm on server B, right? Server is dead. I give it a password. Next, I give it a unique name. I give it some memory, just any kind of random memory. Just something like that. I can either come in networking mode or not. I go next, I hit finish. And now what I'm basically done is I've virtually booted server A onto server B in a virtual machine. So you will see up here in just a minute a virtual machine come up. So as long as I have access to those backup files, I can recover a physical server in under 5 minutes. So in Sarah, in your part, if you had a workstation or something in that organization that could see these files, you could pretty much do the same thing. There's a little technology behind that, but what it's basically doing is building this virtual server. It's using and I'm not going to get too technical, but we're using what they call a Type 2 hypervisor, which you don't really need to know. But it's able to host this machine in a Windows platform. So that's basically recovering that server. Of course, if I had backed up the other server, you would have seen that same folder recreated. But you get the idea. My whole point of the concept is you're able to restore really quick. So who has questions while this is moving? Is it pretty amazing? Yeah, go ahead.
the technology that Monty Pros uses?
It is. Yes, they've been using it for a long time, actually. So I can tell you one of the, do I have 2 minutes?
Yes,
I might get on time.
I would like to share that before everybody got here this
Yeah.
morning, Jeff showed me the demo he was gonna do, and it literally did take 3 seconds.
Yeah, the backup was
To do the backup.
We tested it before we got here, of course, and the other one, I guess I changed or clicked something, I don't know what I did, but one quick story is there's a law firm in Tyler, and a friend of mine that's managing that law firm, he manages it outside, he's an outside provider, got a call and said that the email wasn't working, and so he tried to log onto the Exchange server wouldn't come up, or he couldn't log into it, and then he got onto the other file server and tried to get into that same Exchange server, knew it was down. So basically, he virtually booted the machine, brought it up into this environment, called the office, said everybody get out of Outlook, get back in again. They reconnected. He got in his car, drove over to the managing partner of the law firm, and said, he knocked on the door and said, Paul, we got to talk. And he goes, hey, what's up, Dave? He goes, well, you just lost the server. He goes, well, I thought everything was working great. I was told I can get back in. He goes, yeah, no, email's working great, but you lost the server. He goes, David, I'm not following you. I lost the server, but email's great. Is this the Exchange server we lost? Yes, sir, you lost the Exchange server. But you're saying it works. I said, I just sent an email. It's working just fine. He goes, yeah, it works. He's like, just tell me what's wrong. So he walks back to the Exchange server, of course, sees the floating window, or he walks back to the file server and sees this window, and this server is actually running in the background. And he actually unplugs the power of the Exchange server and says, everybody's still in office, we'll still be able to run. So it's just kind of it was a neat story. That's all I've got. Any questions before I turn back over to Bill? All right, thank you guys.
You guys are quiet. How's the food? Good. Hopefully you guys hear me okay? All right, so, Chris showed some really scary numbers. Our intent was not to bring you here to just scare the hell out of you. It was really to show that this stuff really happens. Disasters really do happen. One of the things I was thinking about as Chris was presenting, he talked about the tsunami. And, when you think about Austin, Texas, you don't think about tsunamis. But when the tsunami hit Japan recently, it knocked out 2 factories that create hard drives. And those factories were actually offline for, I believe, 1 to 2 months, pretty long time. And that completely wiped out the supply chain of hard drives. And how does this affect you guys? Well, we had clients who had servers who had hard drives fail. And normally your hard drive fails, you talk to Dell, they'll send you out your hard drive next business day, no problem. We actually had clients who were running on servers with failed hard drives that had delayed orders because of that tsunami. So when you think about the supply chain and technology, even a tsunami that happens around the other side of the world turns around, and it affected our clients here in Austin and their servers. So, it really is not just where the disaster strikes, but the supply chain and the various ways that we've become a global, society or global community. So I want to talk a little bit just about planning. So we've talked about the types of things that can go wrong in your organization. We've talked about the types of disasters. Jeff did an awesome job of talking about the technology we've been in use. I think we've been using StorageCraft since 2007, I believe. Chris, does that sound about right?
Yes.
2007, and we moved away from tape backup, and we've been using image-based backup and recommending image-based backups. And you can talk to our engineers; they were so happy when we got rid of tapes, just because it's just the technology works. We've tested it over and over again, and it really does work. So thank you, Jeff, for that. But I want to talk about now what to do now. We've been given some information. We've been given some options. How do we start the planning process? So I'm just going to go over 5 quick or semi-quick steps to get your plan going. And my idea is, obviously on a lunch like this, we can't go into extreme detail of how to build this this plan. But what we can do is just give you a high-level overview of what we think you need to be thinking about in preparation, and hopefully you can take these steps. And we'll have a few action items at the end that will help prepare your plan. So, very, very easy step, but it's often one that's overlooked. So, in your disaster recovery planning, you have to decide who's going to take the helm, who leads it, who is in charge of developing the plan. This is often overlooked, but it's critically important. And it doesn't have to be the business owner. This is something that you can delegate this out. This is not, most of the ideas and concepts that we're talking about are not extremely technical. A lot of them are just very, very practical from a business perspective. What happens when X and Y, Z happens, and what can we do about it? So you can delegate that to an admin. If you're a large organization, oftentimes there's committees that you might form. Most of our clients, it's probably just one person. I'm assuming if you came today, that person might even be you, and maybe you've accepted that authority or that responsibility, maybe you haven't, but it starts with just saying, okay, I'm going to assign it to this person and go. One critical aspect to determining who's in charge, because we know who's in charge, right? The budget. So you have to have executive buy-in throughout this process. So if you are the CEO or the president or the person writing the checks, you have that buy-in, so you are that committee. But for some of you, maybe you delegate it, or you're the person who's delegated to create that plan. Throughout the process, get executive buy-in. Some of the steps you have to take will take your time, will take some resources, and you want to make sure that you don't create this awesome plan and then at the end it's like, oh, well, we can't afford it. Business continuity and disaster recovery plan can be expensive, but as our title slide said, you don't have to spend an incredible amount of money to do it. There are some simple steps you can make to get you started. So first is decide who's going to be in charge. 2 is perform a risk assessment. So you may not know what this is, and I'm going to give it to you from the perspective of an IT, from your IT, because you can perform a risk assessment for what happens if your building becomes a smoking hole, right? That is one line of thinking that is a risk, very, very, very slight for most of us in this room, but that is one risk that you could then develop and start developing a strategy for. And so you need to perform that risk assessment. How to perform a risk assessment. First thing I would say is just sit down with a group, spend a couple of hours with the critical people or personnel in your company, and try to figure out what are the critical business processes I have in my company that could go down. Maybe it's software, maybe it's hardware, power outage. I think most of us in this room, the most likely scenario that I'm asking you to plan for is probably hardware malfunction, software malfunction, having to relate, your server or maybe your critical systems will crash or go down at some point. That is what is the most likely disaster that those of us in our room will face. And for clients of mine to pros, this is something that we are regularly trying to evaluate and protect them against. So you decide what are those systems that I need to protect. You come up with a plan for each disruption. Why do you have to treat them individually? Well, if you think about it, your power going out, that's something that could happen to any of us probably at our buildings. That causes unique challenges. That is not necessarily a permanent disaster, it's a temporary outage. It's not, you don't probably need a disaster recovery plan for power outage. But you do need to think about business continuity. What happens if the power goes out for 4 hours? What business processes are disrupted if your power goes down? Yeah, good question.
Just to add something to that, a lot of people don't know this, but there's a fight right now between the power industry in Texas and the Texas legislature. We have 1,000 people moving to the state every day, and there are no new power plants being built because the power industry is fighting for more regulation to give them a monopoly. And so the plan is for rolling brownouts in either 2014 or 2015 to force the legislature's hand. So this doesn't seem like a big issue right now, but it's about to be a big issue as there's a struggle. So a 4-hour power outage is actually a very real possibility next year and the year after that.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, I don't know, at least my experience in Austin is we haven't had any kind of rolling power outs, where I know other parts of the country certainly have. Again, I just want to highlight the difference between, I want to drive this point home. Business continuity, how do you stay up and running? Disaster recovery, what happens when disaster strikes? How do you recover? So power outage is not about recovery, it's about how to keep things going. Other things to consider, your email, line of business apps, loss of internet, loss of office. These are all different types of disruptions that you can plan for. Once you've created that list, okay, what are the key things we need to protect against? This is important. Prioritize by likelihood, right? How many of you need to spend a half a day of your life worrying about what to do if your building catches on fire? I mean, is it likely? No. And again, am I saying not to plan for it? No, you can plan for it, but you have to allocate your resources and time to plan against the things that are most likely to have an effect on your business. And because, I mean, how many days or how many hours in a year do we plan and prepare and create disaster recovery documents and plan for this? Very, very few. I mean, has anyone in this room spent more than 8 hours in the last year working on a business recovery or disaster recovery plan? Okay, maybe one. So again, a lot of this has to do with, that's why prioritization is so important. Moving on, so once we've performed a risk assessment, here's where we're going to identify the systems and processes. A lot of this has to do with software, hardware platforms that you use in your business every day. Financial, so maybe this is QuickBooks. So you say, okay, I can't live with QuickBooks, or I can't live without QuickBooks for maybe 24 hours. Again, question to ask yourself, going back to what Jeff said about recovery time or recovery points, how long can you go without QuickBooks? Some of our clients say, oh, I process payments twice a week, so as long as it wasn't on a Tuesday and a Thursday, we could be down for 24, 48 hours on QuickBooks and be no problem. Other people, maybe they process payments or payroll or some sort of checks on a regular basis, and they say, if QuickBooks is down for 4 hours, people are experiencing pain. Again, so you identify the process, you determine the pain, you talk about how much can that system be down, how critical is that to us as a business, and you start to build a plan around it. Operational, maybe these are your tools. For a CPA firm, maybe this is your tax software. For Mighty Pros, this is our history, this is our ticketing system, this is our CRM, our client information, maybe for sales. Client support, this could be web portals. Again, I'm just trying to get you guys thinking about what are the parts of your business that you need to run on a daily basis. I'm actually shocked at the number of companies that run entirely off of email. They live in their email. In fact, that is, at the end of this, if we have time, I'd like to spend a few minutes just talking, giving you an example of doing a risk assessment and developing a strategy around email server, because that's something that everyone in this room has and it should be concerned about. Company data, where's your data? How long can you live without it? Just a quick question. So I have a list of 6 items here. What did I miss? What are other critical business processes, whether it's software or hardware or something you do in your business that you can't live without and you need to have a plan for? Personnel. Absolutely. So losing your personnel, having them go away. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe revenue for marketing.
Marketing. Absolutely. Yeah. Other things. What else in your business, if it went down today, it would just cause you some serious pain that may not be listed here?
Website.
Website. Especially people who do transactional, financial transactions or sales through their website. I mean, that starts costing money very quickly. Yes, sir.
Domain control, where it's registered, where it's DNS.
Absolutely. Yeah, having proper DNS, record keeping, being able to control that. That became very apparent. I don't know if you guys remember, it was, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, GoDaddy, one of the largest domain providers, went down for the better part of a day. And there were certain things that My IT Pros was trying to do for our customers on that site, and we couldn't do it. So, that was another business impact. Anybody else thinking of critical business processes that they need to think about? For most of us in the small business world, a lot of it comes down to connectivity and your server. Most people run their applications, most people have their email on their server or their critical business applications on their server. Their data is on their server. That's why Jeff was sitting here talking to you about being able to recover your server. So much of our business continuity and disaster recovery planning for our small business clients has to do with backing up and being able to recover their servers, because that's where a lot of these things live. Okay, so once you've identified those, coming up with a strategy. The very best strategy you can do is preventative. I didn't find a specific fact for this, so but I wanted to drive the point home. For every $1 you spend on preventative maintenance, it's worth like probably $10, $20, $30 in disaster recovery. Going back to what Chris mentioned, it is so much easier to plan and prepare for a disaster. It is so much cheaper to plan and prepare for a disaster than to recover from one. And so, going back to the example earlier, do you want to spend X amount a month or X dollars a year to prepare, or do you want to just get hit with that big $10,000 check or more to recover when you haven't properly planned for that? So the number one thing I would suggest, and really developing a strategy, this is where, from the perspective that we're taking, IT comes in handy. Having a relationship with an IT services provider, having a relationship with someone who understands your business and can sit down and say, here are your critical business processes, and help you develop a strategy. Because many of you in this room, your business is not IT. So when you say, yeah, email is critical, and I'm sitting here telling you, you need to develop a strategy for how to make sure your email's up. Well, you may not know how to do that. Again, that's something that My IT Pros can help with. Determining your recovery point objective. So there was 2 terms that Jeff used, recovery point objective and recovery time objective. And I just want to, again, highlight that. Recovery point is how long ago was your last backup? How long, so if something goes wrong and you have to go back to backup, how long can that time be? How much data do you have to redo? How many sales invoices? How much typing and data entry do you have to re-enter? that is that time that you're willing to live with. Recovery time is how long can you be down? Again, going back to the QuickBooks example. Some companies, yeah, okay, our QuickBooks went down, it can be down for 24 hours, that's fine. We had a CPA firm tell us that during tax season, I think they had, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 billable tax personnel. That average billable rate was $200 an hour. And if they had 15, and during busy part, they're talking about thousands of dollars an hour for every hour they're down. So basically, their recovery time objective was as small as it can be. And we implemented StorageCraft solution and gave them a recovery time objective of 15 minutes. We took a snapshot of their server. If they went down, we could recover them extremely fast because every hour meant thousands of dollars of lost productivity and billing. Contingency plans. Again, thinking about what can go wrong, developing a plan, developing a strategy for each item. You can't just have one giant plan. I think one of the points I want to drive home is to get very specific. What are the key things we have? What is the plan for each one and creating that? And then deciding how we will recover. Some of these, again, vary wildly. Are we talking about a building gone? Are we talking about power being gone? Are we talking about a server being out? That completely changes what that plan that you would develop. And you have to do this for each technology you're talking about because even from an IT perspective, recovering from an email server being down versus recovering from your website being down, it's completely different types of technologies and a different approach to each. And last, but not least, step 5, who likes documenting things? This is a great question. I'll ask and say, do you guys have a disaster recovery plan? And inevitably it's, I think we had some guy come out about 5 years ago, and he walked us through building a disaster recovery plan. Do you know where it is? No, I'd have to go find it. Or, yeah, it's on the server that's actually sitting over there smoking. So you can't just document, but you need to be able to document in a place that you can retrieve it. So, this is where paper still comes in handy. Don't keep your disaster recovery plan only on your server, or else you're going to be hurting when that server crashes. You really, really need to keep it somewhere where you can access. It needs to be tested. Again, based upon the survey I asked earlier, only one person in this room spent more than 8 hours thinking about disaster recovery. So how much can you actually spend on testing? Well, I'll say this. If it doesn't cost you very much to go down, you don't need to spend very much time planning. There's got to be a direct correlation between resources that you'll invest and the ROI. Disaster recovery, why many people don't plan is because they don't see the ROI. I'm not going to get hit by a tsunami. My business is never going to go down. And so therefore, I don't want to spend my precious small time that I have to go and plan for something that may never happen. And so I just want to say that's okay. You're in the right boat. People are driven by their priorities. All my IT pros is wanting to say today is that take a few hours. You can do this very simply. Take a few hours, identify those critical things. Bring my IT pros in, or bring in your IT person if you've got one in-house, or whoever that person is, and sit down and spend a couple of hours just making sure that your critical processes, hardware, software, is being backed up. You have a plan of how to recover, and document that plan, make sure that it's okay, and then come back to it every year. We want to be practical. We're not going to, we know that no one in here can spend a lot of time and resources on this, but it is such a critical piece, and it can help you so much to do it on the front end. So before we go to resources, I want to stop right there. I gave you 5 quick steps to developing a plan. I know I ran through those really quickly. I want to just stop and say questions before I'm going to run through an example real quick of going through those 5 steps. But I want to give you guys a chance to ask questions.
So
Yes,
for
sir.
those of us that are using your backup service, do we have a snapshot of our server? or is it-
Yes, everyone on the Minds Pros backup, we leverage only image-based backups. We take a snapshot of your server. Again, some of that's based upon whatever recovery time, so it could be 15 minutes, it could be 1 hour.
This is
We're
better. I
taking
should've come back here
snapshots throughout the
first.
day, storing those on site. And what we can do with those images is exactly what Jeff was trying to show you, is we can spin up a copy. So if your server went down, let's just bring this into a real world scenario. Your server goes down. You can't be down for 24 hours. Let's say we call Dell and they say, okay, your motherboard and your server went out, we'll have something shipped out tomorrow. And you're sitting there saying, well, I can't wait for my server to come back to. If you're on our platform, we can spin up a virtual copy of your server from the last backup, which could be 15 minutes, 1 hour ago, and you can continue to work on that server. Obviously, it would be a little bit impaired in terms of performance because you're running it on a backup system, but we can do that for you. And so that's the business continuity, is how long it'll be down. Then we also have disaster recovery. So what happens if something happens to your server entirely or your office? We take those backups, we put them into our data center, and we can actually spin up a copy of your server in our data center and give you access to it. So even if your office just was gone, your server just gone, your local backups on site gone, we have another copy off-site that we can give you access to and get you back up and running. So, yes, sir.
Let's say you have a human error and somebody deletes something, a file, whatever. You got it backed up every night, whatever, once a day. And do I need to call, like, say I use you guys, do I need to call you to locate that file from the previous day for 125 bucks a pop? You know, or can I do it myself?
Sure. It could be either. So we have clients
Like
who...
if you're maintaining my server for me.
Right. So just to give you an example, MindTPro, we're a managed service provider. Almost all of the work we do is based upon monthly agreements. So we'll service and take care of your company for X amount per month. And so if you needed us to restore a file for you, we would do that as part of our monthly services. So if you weren't a client and you needed our help, then yes, we would have to come out on an hourly basis to help you with that. But most of the time with our clients, it's part of their monthly services that we're managing their backups and can restore them. Yes, sir.
How much are you involved in the actual helping a company build a disaster recovery plan and document this?
Sure. So we've been contracted a number of times over the years to come and help. Most of the companies that we help build a disaster recovery plan, we're working off of an industry-based template, meaning they've got certain requirements they have to meet. So we personally, we don't have like a master template that we're going to bring to your office and say, here's everything in the world you can think of. Now, we have some examples, that are based upon, just general industry best practices. We've got some samples, and we can help. And that's a great lead-in for what we're going to be doing. So the next action item that you guys can do, if you say, I would like to think about this some more, I would like to work on this some more, we are going to be having a webinar. I believe it's 4 weeks out. Lori, is
Yeah.
that?
I'll send you guys details for the exact date. We're still checking things out.
So it's about 4 weeks out. We're going to do a webinar follow-up where we actually walk through these steps, give you some concrete examples, and hopefully after that meeting, then you'll have at least a plan. I know some of you guys are scribbling some things down. you know, even today, and that's great. But we are going to have a formal webinar. Everyone's invited. It's a free webinar where we walk through, because we knew we couldn't do it in the time today, and hopefully that will give you at least a skeleton. Again, there's so many things that can go wrong that today, even in this webinar we're coming up, we're going to have to focus at a high level and say, here are the things, and we're obviously focusing from an IT level. There's HR concerns, there's location concerns, connectivity, there's other things that are a little bit outside of our realm that have to do with disaster recovery planning that we're not even going to address because we can't. But I hope that answers your question at least a little bit. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but if we're using a system like yours where we're backing up off-site and you all have copies, that covers a lot of those things. You know, whether it's a fire, your building goes down, or someone takes
Absolutely.
a sledgehammer to the server.
Right, so we called the service that we offered our business continuity and disaster recovery service. It's kind of a mouthful. We shortened it to BCDR, and we've been calling it BCDR for many years. And the reason is that, is it a complete disaster recovery plan? No. But the good news is that for our clients who sign up for it, 80% of the things that are likely to happen revolve around your data, your applications, your server, your hardware. And those are all addressed with that solution. So again, if you only do one thing, if your company has a server, so much of your business relies upon that server. Come up with a plan for that server. And if you do nothing else, you're 80% protected. So, yes?
What do you do, or how do you actually protect our backups?
So from like a security standpoint, or?
Security, or how did, what if your facility, for instance?
Sure, absolutely. So the way that it works, so we have the data on the original server. We back that data up to a secondary location on your site. That could be a secondary server, it could be some sort of storage, USB hard drive, NAS, SAN. So you've got local backups on site. Then we replicate those to our data center. So our data center will have a copy of that data as well. And we have geographic redundancy on our data center. So at any given point, your data is on the original with a local backup, off-site in 2 places. So in terms of access security, all the backups, I don't know if you noticed, Jeff went really fast, but when he tried to access that backup, there's an encryption password. So all of your data is encrypted. So it's sitting in our data center, but it also is secured by an encryption password that Mighty Pros keeps and manages. So even if someone were to steal a copy of your backup, they won't be able to access your data. Does that answer the question?
How far geographically separate are the?
Kansas City and Austin. So pretty,
Yeah.
I don't know, how many, 600 miles, 700 miles, something like that. Yes, sir.
Is testing of the backups included in the service? Or?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the way that we do that, a lot of it we owe to StorageCraft. They make it very easy. There's an automated process that verifies the backup, and then in addition, we do manual restores. So we will go right-click on an image, we mount that server as a virtual image, and we see if can we actually access the data. Can the actual server boot up? And that'll tell us whether or not we have a good backup. And that's normally done monthly. Other questions? Okay, well, I think we are at the point of wrapping up. If we don't have any more Q&A, I want to go ahead and pass it back. Laura, do you have any final?
Sure. Let me see. I went ahead and did our business card drawing, and Valerie at Barton Oaks won. Yeah. Knocked over.
So, Chris, any closing thoughts?
On the webinar that's coming up, we will send, everybody who registers for the webinar will send you a Word template. It says personalized to you. These business continuity plan templates, you can download them yourselves. You can do a Google search and find them. there are a bunch of blanks that you fill out. You get this big document with a bunch of blanks to fill out, and then it's just a matter of taking time to do it. What we want to do with this webinar is give everybody an opportunity to identify who your business continuity team is. You'll be sitting in your conference room while we're sitting in our conference room, walking you through the steps. You'll have the document in place, and you can start filling in the blanks. And in that 45 minutes to an hour, think of it as a business continuity workshop. You can have at least the beginnings of your plan. And what happens if the phone systems go out? What happens if there's ice on the road? We can't. Who do we call? Where do we go? What do we do? So we'll have that for everybody who wants to participate, and Lori will send that to you. She'll also send you a link where you can see everything, this whole slide deck. So for those of you, I should have told you that at the beginning, for those of you who scribbled the notes. I apologize for not telling you that.
Okay, and last thing I would say, if you're not on the MyIT Pros backup solution and you are interested in that, we're happy to talk to you. We can come out and meet with you and discuss that. And last thing I'll say is, obviously this is a very personalized, plan for your business. If anyone wants to stick around and ask questions, we've got Nathan and Justin here. They both implement and manage and monitor our backup solutions on a regular basis, so they can talk to you about it. As well as we've got Steve from Artisan and Jeff from StorageCraft. So we'll be hanging out. If you guys do have questions you didn't get a chance to get answered, we'll hang out and talk to you guys further. And I think that's it. Thank you very much for joining us. You guys have a nice day.